going on, Vikings fans? Welcome in the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up, we have a fun one for you guys as we're going to be discussing the idea of Myles Garrett being potentially traded to the Minnesota Vikings after he did request a trade from the Cleveland Browns early on today. And then the second half of today's show, ESPN's Matt Miller dropped his latest NFL mock draft. So who does he have the Vikings selecting? And I'll give you guys my thoughts on that on the tail half of today's show. But before we do so, let's get the good vibes going. I know it's off-season time. We still got a long ways away before the NFL season starts next September. But if you guys want the Minnesota Vikings to win the NFC North next season, just go down there, hit that thumbs up icon, and put today's goal as 500 likes. If you guys could help me out, make me look good for my bosses, go down there and hit that thumbs up icon. So the breaking NFL news today is all-pro edge rusher Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Browns after 8 seasons in Cleveland. This was definitely a shocker to me. But first off, I do want to say this because then I can already see the comment section being flooded with, Patrick, there is no way the Vikings are trading for Myles Garrett. I totally agree with you. I think there is close to a 0% chance that the Vikings do trade for Myles Garrett. But hey, it's NFL offseason. I want to have some fun on today's show. And again, anything is possible in the NFL. And honestly, after the Luka Doncic Los Angeles Lakers trade this past weekend, anything is possible across all major sports. So let's talk about Myles Garrett potentially coming to the Minnesota Vikings here. One of the best edge rushers in the National Football League, undisputed, if not the best edge rusher in the NFL. And the last 4 seasons, he has been awesome. I mean, 14-plus sacks in each of the last 4 years. He has always been healthy, playing either 16 or 17 games the last 4 seasons. He's great against the run as well. There's a reason, he has won Defensive Player of the Year awards, multiple times, and he is one of the best players in the National Football League. So what could a trade look like potentially between the Browns and the Vikings? Well, it's going to take a lot. And with the Vikings, first-round pick from last season, Dallas Turner, not really getting a bunch of, reps this past season, maybe he could be involved in a trade. So this is what I cooked up. I have the Browns receiving Dallas Turner, first-round pick from last season, a 2025 first-round pick, number 24 of this year, and a 2025 third-round pick from the Minnesota Vikings. And all of that, you will get Myles Garrett. Now, something we have to consider when we're talking about a Myles Garrett trade, he will probably want to command 4 years, around $135 million on his next extension, what the Vikings will have to pay. And obviously, there's a lot of holes still to be filled on this Vikings roster, like the interior offensive line, the cornerback position, and the interior defensive line. Do you want to allocate all of that free agent spending to a guy like Myles Garrett, who, no doubt one of the best players in the National Football League, but do you want to spend all that free agency money on an edge rusher? It's just something you're going to have to consider. But what about another trade out there? And the Browns, in desperate need of a quarterback, and maybe they don't love either of the top 2 options, like a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders. What about a little sign-in trade that has Myles Garrett heading to Minnesota? So it would be Sam Darnold, and then your first-round pick and your third-round pick. So that's kind of, same trade pretty much, but you just replace Sam Darnold with Dallas Turner in this deal, and then obviously the Vikings do end up getting Myles Garrett in this trade. But Spotrac actually tweeted out just a financial side of this deal for trading for defensive end Myles Garrett. The new team acquires in 2025 $19.8 million cap hit, and in 26 a $25 million cap hit, non-guaranteed. Now, obviously, he is probably going to be seeking, like Spotrac tweeted out, a 4-year, $137 million deal, so those could change, but if the trade just goes down, those are the cap hits for the next 2 seasons. But, are the Vikings really in need for an edge rusher? Because I think they have one of the better tandems in the National Football League with Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, both those guys, getting up to 12 sacks on this past season. But I will say about Van Ginkel, it's not like he is a true, like, 3-point stance edge rusher in the NFL. He's a very versatile player, and he can just pretty much be a Swiss Army knife on defense. But he's not a really hand in the dirt, set the edge type of edge rusher. But both these guys were awesome. I mean, 18 tackles for loss, 5 forced fumbles combined from the 2 of these guys. Truly one of the better tandems in the National Football League. And I'll say this on the Vikes trading for Myles Garrett, you would create one of the best defensive lines in the NFL if this trade goes down. Like, could you imagine if you had Harrison Phillips on the inside with maybe a draft pick or, maybe somebody else, and then you got the 3 edge rushers, Van Ginkel, Grenard, Myles Garrett. I mean, you would cause havoc on other teams' offensive lines, and I'm sure Brian Flores, I mean, if you allowed him to get his hands on a guy like Myles Garrett, man, oh man, oh man, I'm sure he would have an absolute field day with it. But again, there's a financial side, and also there's a side, do you want to give up like your limited draft capital? Because if the Vikings would do this trade of the first-round pick and the third-round pick, you would have 2 picks, just 2 fifths next season. So, again, I think this is very, very unlikely, but hey, it's the dog days of the NFL offseason. Want to have some fun to start off today's show. But if this is the trade that comes across your, phone screen, that, breaking news, the Vikings are acquiring Myles Garrett in a blockbuster trade, would you accept this deal? Give me an A for accept or give me a D for decline down below in the comments section. Myles Garrett heads to Minnesota, and then the Browns receive Dallas Turner and a 2025 first-round pick and a 2025 third-round pick. You guys let me know your thoughts down below. Now we'll dive into Matt Miller's latest mock draft here in a second. But first off, got to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and it is Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Now Game Time has an awesome new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. Now, my favorite feature of the Game Time app is their all-in pricing. If you guys toggle this feature, it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They also have a views from your seat feature, which gets you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you even buy. So if you guys are trying to go to a Minnesota Timberwolves game, Minnesota Wild game, whatever it may be that requires buying a ticket, Game Time will be your best friend for doing just that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's dive into it. Matt Miller's latest mock draft for the 2025 NFL draft. As there is a number of different directions where the Vikings could go with this first round pick. Could it be in the secondary? Could it be in the trenches? Well, I'll share with you guys what Matt Miller had the Vikings doing here in a second. But first off, I do want to look at the picks before the Minnesota Vikings at pick number 24. So they had Luther Burden, wide receiver from Mizzou, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at pick 19. And then Colston Loveland. This is the first mock draft we have broke down on the show where Colston Loveland is not going to Los Angeles Chargers at pick 22, but he is going to the Denver Broncos at pick 20. Then Emeka Egbuka, the Steelers will take him at pick number 21. And then Ashton Jeanty heads to the Los Angeles Chargers. I know Jim Harbaugh would absolutely love this pick. Honestly, just a fan of the NFL. I would love Jeanty heading to Los Angeles, but then also Josh Connerly, offensive tackle from Oregon, heading to the Green Bay Packers. So where does that leave the Minnesota Vikings? Well, the Vikings draft Walter Nolen, defensive tackle from Ole Miss, at pick number 24. Now, I'm in, I think, the minority of people where I say I think defensive line is just as much as a position of need for the Minnesota Vikings as offensive line. I know we got great edge rushers, but specifically on that interior, I want the Vikings to address this group hard, whether that's free agency or the draft, and ESPN has them addressing that in the draft. So let's just see what Matt Miller had to say on the Vikings drafting Walter Nolen. So he said filling gaps on both lines will be a major focus of Vikings offseason, regardless of their direction at quarterback, and Nolen is too great of a fit to bypass here. Senior Bowl week was huge for him. Nolen showed scouts his trademark speed and gap-splitting ability, but also mixed in a dose of power that wasn't always on his game tape. The Vikings could be big spenders in free agency to lock up a 3 technique, like a guy like Osa from the Dallas Cowboys we talked about, but Nolen is a plug-and-play fit in Brian Flores' defense if that money is diverted elsewhere. And I totally agree with what Matt Miller's saying. I think he nailed it on the head with that the Vikings do need to add a 3 technique. Like, you like guys like Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, but do you love those guys at the 3 tech spot? Probably not. Now, his career sacks, he's been a monster. Started off at Texas A&M. 2023-2022 transfer to Ole Miss this past season and had his breakout year. And in 2024, in just 13 games played, had a total of 48 tackles, 14 TFLs, and from the interior of a defensive line in 13 games, he was actually have 6.5 sacks and a total of 35 pressures. And he also pretty good at getting his hands in passing lanes, had 3 pass breakups, and he also had 2 forced fumbles on the season. So I like this pick. Very physical guy. And again, if the Vikings do, let's just say, go big on cornerback in free agency, go big on offensive line in free agency, I really think they need to shift their attention to round 1 of the NFL draft, attacking that defensive line spot. We talked about guys like Tyleik Williams from Ohio State with bunch of different guys they could draft in the interior of that defensive line. But, I think their free agency spending will really tell us how they attack the NFL draft, because there are good cornerbacks. There are somewhat decent interior offensive line options at pick number 24, but let's just say the Vikings attack O-line hard in free agency. Maybe you re-sign Byron Murphy. Watch out for them drafting a defensive lineman in round 1. But I'll ask you guys this. If you're on the clock, pick number 24, you're GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Who do you want the Vikings to draft? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And also, give me a follow on Twitter right down there. @PatSiebes is the handle. If you guys give me a follow, I'll give you guys a follow right back. But see you guys next time. As always, Skol Vikes.